What do most Fortune 500 executives have in common? They learned important lessons on the fields and courts of their high school and collegiate sports teams. This is true for both men and women. Ernst & Young found that a whopping 94% of women holding a C-suite position played sports. Their wins and losses shaped their habits and who they would become. Join me on my journey to sit with some of the brightest executives in the world as we discuss how sports shape their professional trajectory. In partnership with Chief Executive Magazine, the voice of America's CEO community. I'm your host, Don Yeager, and this is Corporate Competitor Podcast. With me for today's episode is Cesar Enciso, founder and CEO of the technology and consulting company EVOTEK. Cesar received Ernst & Young's Entrepreneur of the Year Award for the Pacific Southwest and was tapped to be a judge for that award in 2022. The way he cares for his people has set EVOTEK's culture apart. In fact, so much so that the San Diego Business Journal has highlighted EVOTEK as a best place to work for 7 consecutive years. I'm excited to learn how wrestling at Cal State Fullerton shaped the leader that he is today.
We evolve or we die. Life is growing, go. You're going to die. If you don't grow, the second part of it is not going to end well. I'm the most comfortable being uncomfortable. I'm still a lifelong learner. That kid that is trying to tear my mom's toaster apart to figure out how things work. Everybody talks about EQ and IQ, but to not really understand the curiosity part of life is probably the thing that's missing out of most people's lives.
Cesar, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Don, for having me. And I'm super excited being on this podcast with you.
You know, you grew up in Covina, California, and sports absolutely had an impact on your early life. You went on from high school wrestling to actually wrestle at Cal State Fullerton. Tell me about the role that competition played in your childhood.
Yeah, so growing up, being the youngest of 3, the one thing I had was I could almost outwork anybody. I was always trying to keep up with my older siblings. My older brother, he excelled in sports. He excelled in track and field. He excelled in baseball, and he also wrestled. That was probably the main sport that I could actually get him. My senior year in high school, I started off the season 21-0.
Wow.
I was going to go to the state finals, and I was going to actually win it. That was my mentality at the time. On my 22nd match, I basically dislocated my shoulder, did some real damage to it. It took me out for the season. I still had the mentality that I was going to be able to wrestle. I was still practicing and probably did more damage. Hindsight, after the season, did not feel good about being undefeated for the season. I was a complete failure. From that, I had the ability to go to Cal State Fullerton, but throughout the first 2 years, I could not get out of my mind that I failed. I was always a very good wrestler. Those first 2 years in college, I was terrible. I just could not get out of my own head. I had to have my coach really sit me down and explain to me the power of failure, that throughout this time, you're here for a reason. You need to continue your story, your journey. Coach Koss really got me into the mentality of getting back in the mat and feeling that I had the ability to be here in college and wrestle. And wrestling was kind of a easy escape for me to really compete in the mat. What I loved about it, Don, was the ability to compete based on your own skill, one-on-one, and see all your hard work pay off on a mat. That was awesome to see. We didn't come from a lot of means. Sports was kind of that great equalizer, being able to go and play basketball in your neighborhood doesn't cost a lot of money. So sports was just always part of who we were from the age of 5 all the way through college and even beyond college.
I love that you said that the one thing you knew from childhood was that no one was ever going to outwork you. What a powerful comfort that would become for you, because a highly competitive nature and a willingness to outwork others would lead you to some pretty great things professionally.
Yeah. Will Smith said many, many moons ago. The only thing I see that is distinctively different about me is that I'm not afraid to die on a treadmill. You might have more talent than me, you might be smarter than me, but if we get on a treadmill together, there are two things. You're going to get off first, or I'm going to die. It's really that simple. That has defined a lot of how I believe my life was set up. What I've always loved about wrestling was it does give you the ability to actually have you focus on the controllables. When I was a freshman, first day of wrestling, I weighed basically 129 and I got down to 105 within a month and a half. Those 4 years in high school, my diet during wrestling season was incredibly clean. On top of that, I averaged 10 miles a day running with those old school garbage bags.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so those were those were some interesting times, but the difference between being interested and being committed. In breakfast, the chicken is interested and the pig's committed. It actually was an obsession of mine to making sure that I got those 10 miles in every day. It was amazing to me that you could actually do that, working on your diet, working on outworking and out hustling people, being able to work on just the things that you can control really had a huge effect, not just on wrestling, but in my whole life.
We hear that phrase all the time. Control the things you can control. For many people, it's nothing more than a catchphrase. They don't really think about what can I control. Wrestling showed you there are certain things that will have a direct impact on something you can control.
Yeah,
That's the key to your entire success. So, how do you do it? How do you, as a leader, make sure that you're driving commitment as opposed to just interest from your employee team?
that's a great question, Don. When I started EVOTEK, we started off with 4 employees and we're up to 200 employees and we've gone from zero revenue to a little over $500 million in 8 years.
Wow.
Really the whole business started off on the whole concept of conscious capitalism. How do you get folks to really believe and feel like they are not just part of the company, but they own the company? If you're in finance or marketing, I want to hear from everybody and have a voice. We started that very, very early. After our first year, we got into a profitability state. We wanted to make people feel safe and secure from a financial standpoint. We pay 100% of the individual healthcare, dental, vision.
Mm.
We take that right off the table and we make people feel like if they need amazing healthcare, that they have it. We pay up to $6,500 in their 401k every year from a match standpoint. It doesn't matter if you are in finance, it doesn't matter if you're in marketing, doesn't matter if you just got out of college. We don't look at entry level jobs as having people struggle from a safety standpoint. Our benefit package are in the top 5% of technology companies, and we are not the big companies of the world. I've been an avid reader since I was 13. The best lessons you actually learn are from people that have lived this life already. If you read the autobiography of Benjamin Franklin, guess what? You're going to learn some amazing lessons that you don't have to wait until you die to learn those lessons. One of the things I remember reading in a book when I was 18 was the three things that we have in common as humans are health, wealth, and kids. If you could take those things off the table, you allow your people to do some amazing things if they're not feeling that they're basically in survival mode.
Health, wealth, and kids.
Yeah,
You want to make sure these are things they do not spend their time worrying about. You're going to try to do the best you can to take care of them. And as a result, they bring their very best day in and day out into the workplace.
absolutely. If you make people feel safe and secure, you're going to actually see some amazing things.
This explains why Ernst & Young in 2021 recognized you as the Pacific Southwest Entrepreneur of the Year. When you received the award, you said, "This is unthinkable for me, how I grew up, that I would ever even be in this position."
Yeah. I'm first generation. When I grew up in Covina, I did not see a lot of people with my culture owning businesses.
Mm.
To build a company that's going to actually have legacy, that was never a goal. To be honest with you, it was just mind blowing. But I've always contributed to the people here at EVOTEK.
Yeah.
But in the beginning of it, you almost feel like you don't belong there. You're looking at these other stories and you're like, imposter syndrome. How did I get here? Once you start competing, you start saying, you know what? I do belong here.
Mhm.
One of the books I remember reading at 18 was a book called The Wealthy Barber. It's kind of a simple, silly story about this barber that cuts hair, but he is a millionaire because he invests 28 cents of every single dollar into the market, into other places. So I decided to take 38 cents of every dollar I earned. And I found that 9 out of the 10 people in Southern California built out their wealth doing real estate. I've never claimed to be the smartest person. I know how to copy a model pretty well. Imagine you being a 22, 23-year-old kid at the end of the month, and I only have a few dollars left. And you have your friends saying, hey, we're going to go grab a drink over at the local bar. Hey, I'm staying home, guys. And they would get so frustrated with me. They'd be like, okay, Cesar, we're going to pay for your beers. Just come out. We want to spend time with you. And I'm like, okay, I have $5 to contribute. That's all I have. I was very focused on my goals early on and bought my first house at 21. I basically had my financial wealth in real estate by the age of 38. And it gave me the ability to do a lot of other cool things in this world. If it's building out some foundations, if it's building out EVOTEK, if it's building out some other organizations.
38 cents of every dollar you're making at 18 years old, you're setting aside and ultimately going to invest in real estate. I love that discipline. Would you credit some of what you had to go through to become collegiately eligible to wrestle as something that would play into even this willingness to say, no, I'm sorry, I'm going to forsake that for something else?
Absolutely. Dan Gable was just a huge hero in my eyes. And I remember reading a story in Sports Illustrated about when he was ready to train for the Olympics in 1972, I want to say. He would wake up in the middle of the night and basically say, what are the Russians doing today? What are the Russians doing right now? He would wake up at 1, 2 a.m. and do two workouts. He would do his one workout and then work out the same times the Russians were. The amount of sacrifice I've seen wrestlers do, they have done things that have been unthinkable when they started their wrestling careers.
I love it. Making it even greater is that EY reached out and asked you to be a judge for this year's award. What are you seeing in some of those applications that's really grabbing you and suggesting to you that these are lessons that might become universal truths and what it's going to take to be successful as we grow our businesses?
The one quality that I see throughout all of the stories from friends through being a judge at EY through my own journey is the ability to get up after you fail. As sick as this might sound, I used to get excited about failure because I knew that the more I failed, the faster I would learn and the more successful I would be one day. The story I heard from you regarding Kobe Bryant still sticks out to me. They think about all his accolades, but the thing that people don't know about Kobe Bryant is he has shot the basketball more than anybody in the history of the NBA. So he's failed more than anybody else. Think of Reggie Jackson. He struck out more than any Major League Baseball player in the history of baseball.
But that's not what made him Mr. October.
No, nobody ever talks about him striking out the most. Thomas Edison took him over 1,000 times to try to invent the light bulb, but it didn't deter him. He was very focused. What a lot of people don't know is I had an Evotech like business in 2005 and it failed for many reasons. There is no way I would have been able to get to this journey without that big business failure. I had lots of great wins of highly ranked people in college, but the things that I still carry with me is the failure, not being able to get straight in my head and being able to really focus on the controllables. There are so many people in this world that are so close on success and they give up at the wrong time.
One failure short.
Yep.
You're right, there is a sickness to it, but the more you fail, the faster you'd learn, the more successful you'd be. So I do want to talk to you about EVOTEK, what you built and the team you've created. It's so fascinating. You built this entire model around involving your employees and the conscious capitalism approach right from the very beginning. When you're recruiting employees early on, how are you explaining to them what this model is going to look like and how it's ultimately going to play out for them?
Great question, Don. When I do interview people, I let them know that I believe if we do this properly and we are both vested, this will be their last job that they ever have,
Mm.
which is a bold statement, but I believe it. What's unique about EVOTEK is we've been profitable after year one. I have never taken a dollar from the company from a profitability standpoint. I paid our taxes, I do the distribution on that, but every single dollar that's ever been earned stays within the company. So if we need to invest in increases, if we need to invest in more employees, if we need to invest in acquiring a company, if we need to invest in better healthcare, the economy could fall off the cliff. I could keep my 200 employees safe and sound for 4.5 years with no money coming in. There's not many businesses that have set that.
Right.
March 15th of 2020, our goal that year was to do $200 million. When COVID happened, we got all our employees in an all hands Zoom meeting. We told them that goal is gone. If we run at zero profit, but we keep every single one of our employees, that's success to us. And by the way, we're increasing the healthcare, upping our 401k, and our new goal is to make sure everybody feels safe and secure. That year, we went from 174 to $311 million. But people felt sick.
Wow. So you took the 200 million off the table. It's no longer on the wall. We want to keep everybody fully employed and we want to create safety and security for each and every employee. And the result was you basically doubled in size.
Yes.
What a powerful lesson that is. So why do you think it is that more leaders and organizations aren't following that model?
I think we live in the greatest country in the world, and capitalism is a big part of who we are as our story in America. Shareholders, their job is to maximize profit. People invest in the stock market to get profit, not for conscious capitalism. It's very counterintuitive what I set up, but if you set it up properly, you're going to get more profit. But you as an owner are not buying jets and boats and vacation homes. You're really thinking about your employees first. There's lots of businesses out there that when they do it, they're highly successful.
So, in your opinion, can this only happen in privately held companies like yours?
Yeah, I do believe that. I mean, you saw the story that actually came out with Patagonia.
I did.
He's donating his whole company and put it in a trust because he didn't want private equity to be able to make it public because he believed that the mission would actually change. And the thing that I got from that whole press release more than anything, his number one customer is Earth.
Right.
Wow. He started not working during Christmas time and he wanted his employees to take the time off. That's somebody that's committed to community. That's somebody that's committed to his people.
Wow, I love that. In athletics, coaches often motivate, work on feedback, help you improve. Shout out to Coach Koss.
Now,
Who coaches you today?
when I really think about it, it's what I've talked earlier. I mean, my best and biggest coaches are books. Books are really honest about the story of somebody's life. A lot of it is the failures. When you read the book of Elon Musk, not sleeping and being a workaholic to me is not something I want to emulate. If you read the story of Steve Jobs, it's not the success that he had from a business standpoint, it's the success that he didn't have as a family standpoint. I'm more successful as a dad than any other place in my life. I'm more vested and I care more about that. My son asked me a question probably about 3, 4 months ago. It's like, Dad, could you be a billionaire if you wanted to? And I said, if I really want to, yeah, Dad believes he could. But at what cost?
Mm.
At the cost of us not spending time together, at the cost of us not going to the Super Bowl and having memories and experiences, of us not doing things not worth it.
Wow, I like that.
I'm Colombian Spaniard. Family is such a big part of our culture that really leaning into family first has taught me a lot.
I love that. That's really great. There are a lot of leaders out there that struggle with this work-life balance challenge and how do you draw the line? Any piece of practical advice that you would offer us?
The first piece is owning your financial success in life and really actually understanding it early on. My dad told me something that still sticks with me. Everybody has the ability to be successful in this world. If you understand how money works, you're going to be able to be more successful. If you become the best at what you do, money will follow. When I went to college, I didn't really have an idea of what I wanted to major in. I decided to actually major in finance. And then I minored in real estate and law because of that book, The Wealthy Barber. By me doing what I did with being financially done at 38, I set up my life to be able to lean into my family first. That gave me the ability to be a better business person because of empathy. Every single human being has the ability to own their own financial independence, and they usually don't. They become a victim. If people actually understand how money works, everybody has the ability to be successful.
Love it. You built your company around 7 value words. I love that you actually ask your employees to be ready to describe the culture and be able to explain it to your customers and your partners and your prospects. Tell me about one of these practice sessions with your employees.
The main word that I like to actually tell our customers, partners, is the word evolve. If you look at EVOTEK, it's a mashup between evolution and technology. And I just decided just to put those two together. We evolve or we die. Life is growing, go. You're going to die. If you don't grow, the second part of it is not going to end well. Being able to make sure that you are always learning and growing is so important. The motto I've lived off in the last 30 years is I'm the most comfortable being uncomfortable. I'm still a lifelong learner. Everybody talks about EQ and IQ, but to not really understand the curiosity part of it, of life, to me is probably the thing that's missing out of most people's lives. I'm still that kid that is trying to tear my mom's toaster apart to figure out how things work.
One of the lines that we use often around our company is that it's about CQ, your curiosity quotient. It's
Ah,
not IQ or EQ. How curious are you? What kind of questions do you ask? We don't want anybody sitting around just listening. We want people jumping in and asking questions.
that's great.
Yeah.
The other word to me is community.
Mm.
We started a foundation 3 years ago. We get our employees involved, we get our customers involved, we get our partners involved. In December, we're going to be doing a Rise Against Hunger that we prepackaged 70,000 meals for the hungry. We do a lot of stuff for the vet because San Diego has the largest military community. Both of our foundations and missions are getting young women and vets to basically transform their life through technology careers.
Mm.
Once you build a company based on conscious capitalism, the real check and balance is not myself, it's the other folks. When somebody's not putting in the effort, there's other people that are actually calling people out. Hey, Don, why are you not doing this? Pick it up. Hey, I tried to actually call you. You didn't pick up. I need you for a customer call. The system is working itself out because our employees are so engaged in our mission and in our cause that there's really not a lot of shade in our company.
Mm. That's so powerful. If you get a group of invested employees, they want to make sure they're surrounded by other invested employees. A players want to hang with A players.
I love that you said that, Don, because the worst thing you could do across A players is hiring a B player. Once you put a B player in, your A players leave. And guess what your B players want to do?
They want to hire C players,
Bingo.
right?
So now you have a company that had a bunch of A players and you fill them up with a bunch of Bs and C players.
Absolutely. Cesar, I was so grateful to get a chance to meet you at TD Senex's event in Lake Tahoe a few weeks ago. And I have to tell you, I loved standing there, hearing about the company, hearing about your passion for the way that you want employees to help you drive what you're growing to become. Is there anything that our listeners can do to stay in touch?
Yeah, I mean, if anybody wants to follow our foundations, you could leave me an email at Cesar@evotek.com. Would love to engage. If anybody has any questions on conscious capitalism or any of that, always willing to share, Don.
We will put links to your foundations in the show notes.
That'd be great.
Cesar, thank you so much. What an honor to be your teammate today and grateful for the time you've given us.
I appreciate you, Don, and love the work that you're doing.
I gained so much listening to Cesar talk about his hero, Dan Gable, one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. But when he talked about how Dan woke up in the middle of the night asking himself, what are the Russians doing right now? So he worked out at the exact same time as the Russians, then went back, did his workout during the middle of the day. If you want to be competitive, if you want to be able to take on your competitor, do what they're doing and then do more. What a great lesson taught early to Cesar by a hero, Dan Gable. But I was really smitten by how much he values failure. The more I failed, the faster I'd learn. The more I learned, the more successful I would be. What a powerful mind shift and a way to look at failure. Failure is a gift, but it's only a gift if you're willing to learn from it. That leads to what really stood out to me, and that was his discussion about a failure that he had in 2005 when, as a young entrepreneur, he tried to start a business much like the one he owns today. But he failed. Instead of just tucking his tail and going away, what he did instead was take note of what he did wrong and make sure not to make those same mistakes 9 years later when he started EVOTEK. Just 3.5 years after that, they crossed $100 million. 7 years after that, he ends up as Entrepreneur of the Year. He took his failure in 2005, turned it into lessons, and in 2014 built a company on its way to becoming generational. What a gift he gave us. What a gift he gives his employees. Cesar will be a teacher for me for many years. While I'm thinking about people who inspire me, I want to shout out Armando Olivares. Armando actually sent a LinkedIn message in which he actually talked about how much the podcast has been teaching him and how it's brought his sports experience into the business setting and built his confidence. Armando, thank you for the shout out on LinkedIn. And I hope this one inspires you as well. And to the rest of you, if this conversation with Cesar has helped you grow, go to Apple Podcasts and leave us a review. Have a great week. If you could share one habit, one thing you've done consistently that allowed you to separate yourself from your competitors, what would it be? In my 30-year career, 2,500 of the greatest athletes, coaches, and leaders answered that question for me.
This is Don Yeager, who did that that article I was telling you about.
Don, Dave Sims with Coach K. How you doing?
Hey, Don. How you doing, my man? Great, sir.
What they gave to me is what I'm giving to you in my online course, Journey to Greatness. Through engaging storytelling and on-demand videos, you will learn the 16 habits that will jumpstart your personal growth. I will instruct you on how to apply these winning characteristics to your life through custom workbook exercises. We are slashing the price for our podcast listeners. Lifetime access to Journey to Greatness is normally $399, but for our podcast listeners, it will be $49 with the code podcast at checkout. Click the banner on corporatecompetitorpodcast.com to enroll. Thanks for listening to the show. I would be so grateful if you left us a rating and a review. We will be rolling out a new episode every Wednesday. To be the first to listen, subscribe to the podcast on our website, corporatecompetitorpodcast.com. Plus, as a thank you gift, you will receive a free chapter from one of my best-selling books on the habits of high-performing teams. Stay in touch by connecting with me on social media at Don Yeager, Yaeger, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Until next week, I appreciate you.